And then James, I believe that do you want to introduce your nonprofit or?
Actually, I will let them introduce.
Perfect.
Them.
Well, hello, everybody. My name is Mason Jacobson. I'm the leader of Homeward for Heroes Montana. We're in 3 states now, Montana, Arizona, and Minnesota. Our mission, I'll be playing a video here in a minute, is to reach out to veterans and first responders that are dealing with traumas from the military, or like I say, with first responders, police, firefighters, EMS, and such. Specifically, focuses on PTSD and suicide prevention. We do 3 events currently in Montana in May, July, and August. And we have a website where veterans, first responders can sign up. And we take them on a 6-night, 5 full-day trek. We have a trek that'll be up here in northwest Montana, up around Libby. And then we do one over in Butte. We gather on the first day, get everybody to meet, and then we start right in the next morning with the program. And I have a program where we spend about an hour to an hour and a half in the morning dealing with traumatic events. And then in the evenings, we sit around the campfire and do more exercises. And then usually by the 2nd or 3rd night gives everybody an opportunity to talk about themselves and traumatic events that they've been through. Usually 90% of the time it's military veterans. The EMS and police community is a little hard to break through to because they've got the career stigma that if they speak out about mental health issues, they feel like they're going to lose their job. So it's actually much more difficult for the first responders to actually get help. So
do you also include groups like search and rescue teams?
Absolutely. Yeah, anybody, and we have civilians once in a while. We deal with anybody, help anybody that's suffered from trauma, and suicide is, the ultimate thing that we try to deal with.
Okay.
But yeah, everybody's welcome. I'm going to play this video here. I apologize. I was so proud of myself. I had everything ready and I didn't bring the remote control, so it's a little bit funny. Closer here.
In December of 2020. My name is Dan Reese. I'm 55 years old and I'm the co-founder of Homeward for Heroes. It all started around a campfire with my wife and I, out in the woods talking, and we saw how much it helped personally. And he overland adventures with us and around the campfire talking through these traumatic experiences. We saw that this really growing sense where now we actually have a full post-traumatic growth program that we and get with people that understand our own mental condition. Everybody gets pretty cohesive and it helps get it out of the head and deal with it.
It might just be the network in this building.
Get your head and start.
Turn off my Wi-Fi phone.
Great.
Are you doing that cellular or
There.
Wi-Fi?
Set off my data here. See if I can.
Do you have that on YouTube? Any way we can link it
I
to the
think
laptop
that
on
could go
the
on.
screen?
Yeah, I don't know if Zoom will be able to hear it because of the copyright issues, but I did want to find it on YouTube so we can include it with.
Do want a real easy way to find it, you scan that QR code there.
Oh, great.
Take you right to it.
Bridget, what are you feeding that kitty?
He eats everything. He's a baby. He's 21 pounds.
Wow.
Beautiful.
No, we haven't done much with the businesses quite yet. That's what this is all about.
One of the experiences that we've had through Homeward for Heroes that really meant a lot to me personally was during COVID. We were out.
Sorry about that. Got some kind of interference going on.
Now you just have to tell us everything that's in the video.
I'm going to just play it here on my phone and let everybody can see.
That's that new dealership right there. Oh, just a couple of ideas. Yeah, well, and Shield Republic is on Big Fort. Chat with them, and I've got a couple of contacts at Nomad Industries as well. They're very.
Sports, and then I had a rank service, joined the Army in 2008, retired in December of 2020. My name is Dan Reese. I'm 55 years old and
Can you do that?
co-founder of Homeward for Heroes. It all started around a campfire with my wife and I, out in the woods talking, and we saw how much it helped me personally. And so with that, we started taking friends out on these overland adventures with us and around the campfire talking through these traumatic experiences. We saw that how it started healing us and helping us has just really grown since where now we actually have a full post-traumatic growth program that we implement in a 10-day overland trek. Homeward for Heroes, you know, when we get out in the woods and get with people that understand our own mental condition, everybody gets pretty cohesive and it helps get it out of their head and deal with it. It's been very therapeutic. You get out of your head and start seeing the blue sky and the green trees. It's some great therapy.
Yeah, you can just try it.
Been cooking for Homeward for Heroes, the whole entire group every night. It's been really nice because it basically forms a community and a connection together where we all have a dinner together.
Some people last year, just my wife and I were able to intervene on 13 suicides. One of the experiences that we've had through Homeward for Heroes that really meant a lot to me personally was during COVID. We were out doing buddy checks with everybody that we knew that's been through our program. And we had one of them text back and said, "I'm drowning." And so we met with him that day, talked, and he was ready to commit suicide. With us always reaching out, it kind of kept him motivated. And so this time when he said, he needed help, we were there. And he went on the next trek, and it was night and day difference just in 3 days. And then all of a sudden he just cracks his smile. he says, this is the first time in my career in ever 20 years that I can finally breathe. And
No one fights alone. So the last bit, the person he was talking about in there was me. Is anybody familiar with PTSD? Has anybody experienced, been around people that have, okay. PTSD, they say approximately 10% of the population is susceptible to PTSD. It has a lot to do with childhood and genetics, whether you're prone to it or not. Some people can deal with trauma. Everybody has if you come up on a car wreck and have to deal with a traumatic experience, everybody's got to deal with it. It may take days or weeks, but it's not a long-term thing. That 10% of the population, that one event or multiple events sticks in your brain. There's not an easy solution for it. I have, for example, I have a friend who was explosive device exposure, getting rid of explosive devices in Afghanistan, Iraq. And he was driving up a road here just in Kalispell up Highway 2, and there was a string going alongside the road. Well, for him, that could have been a trip device, and it put him in Afghanistan. And the strange thing about those PTSD symptoms, your brain takes you back to that moment in time. And it's a real hard thing to describe, but your whole brain and body becomes enveloped in that situation. That particular instance where he saw that string alongside the road, that took him a half hour to unwind and get back out of that experience. I sat with a combat vet. He was in a very extreme black ops situation, and he was captured by the enemy for 2 weeks, where he was beaten and tortured and all that. This was probably 25 years ago, and I sat with him, and he recounted the traumatic experience of going through that. It took him over 2 days to recover. He was actually in bed, and the way it affected his brain is he hurt, physically hurt, after telling that story to me. So that's what gets locked up inside of these guys. One thing that everybody can relate to, and you can kind of imagine the situation in our time that we live in right now with the BLM riots and all of the stuff that was going on with George Floyd. It put police officers in a hypervigilant state where they never knew what was going to happen from one moment to the next. So you've got a cop doing a traffic stop, and maybe there's a warrant on the vehicle. He doesn't know what's ahead of him. He has to treat that like a life and death situation. He has to be prepared to be shot at and to shoot. So he goes, everything is fine. But when he's approaching that car, he's in that hyper alert status. That doesn't go away with a cup of coffee. That hyper alert status that he's on, he's going to now take home to his family. And he's not gonna sleep well that night. And they repeat this day after day after day, whether it's a soldier, a firefighter, a police officer, an ambulance driver. They have to deal with those situations where it spins up their head. And if it keeps going on and on day after day after day, where they don't deal with this trauma, they live in that constant, steady state of hyper alertness, hyper vigilance, we call it. You'll ask probably most of the cops that deal with this, most of the veterans that deal with this, when they go into a restaurant, back to the wall. or sitting in the corner because they know it's safe. I mean, logically, you go into McKenzie River Pizza, nobody's going to come in and shoot you. But their brain has been so exposed to that hypervigilant state, they have to be prepared in every situation they're in. Driving, the guys that have done nighttime patrols in Afghanistan, Iraq, or wherever, they're going to have a hard time driving at night. The lights, the red lights, the yellow lights, the darkness, the rain, everything is going to spin their mind up, and they're white knuckled driving that car at nighttime. So you've got people that deal with it immediately. They deal with the trauma and get through it. Most of the guys, being the tough guys they are, and women, they don't deal with it. They've got their career to think about. They don't want to talk about mental health issues with the boss. And so they just keep it bound up inside. And the more they keep it bound up inside, the more they withdraw from the public, to the point where they shut themselves in a dark room at night and just sit there and stew and think about what they've been through. So with Homeward for Heroes, we get the guys out, and the majority of people we deal with are usually Afghanistan soldier aged and above. Once in a while, we'll get a younger person, but you've got guys that have been bound up in this situation for 15, 20, 25, 30 years and have never dealt with the traumatic memories in their brain. And it's devastating. It devastates them. It devastates their marriage, their family, their friends. Nobody wants to be around them because they'll get these outbursts of anger because they don't know how to deal with what they've been through. And most of them have no idea that there's somebody sitting right next to them that's been through it and understands. So with Homeward, the initial biggest therapy that the guys get is coming into the group and having somebody say, "We got you. We've been there. We understand." And when that light clicks on that they're not alone, that's the huge event in their life. Just realizing that there's all kinds of people out there that have experienced not necessarily their trauma, but the effects that trauma has had on their brain and body. It leads to mental anguish, suicide, physical stress, mental stress, chronic pain is hand in hand with PTSD because the body is stressed. Imagine walking out in the woods in eastern Montana and coming around a big rock and having a rattlesnake right there. That puts your fight and flight emotion in your brain extreme, okay? Imagine never having that turn off, that everything in your house, every piece of furniture walking around, there's a snake behind it now. Imagine living like that for 10, 20, 30 years. And that's what these guys have been through. They cannot turn that off. So anyway, we do this program now where we sit down with them in the morning. We have an exercise that we do with the guys to help them process and unwind. And we start with the worst trauma that they've been through in life. And then we start processing that trauma. And we do that for 4 days in a row. And then at nighttime, we sit around the campfire and give the people an opportunity to actually speak about it. And there's something very therapeutic of taking those memories and putting them on paper and then actually putting them out with other people. The community is just amazing. Within 24 hours, you've got guys that feel comfortable, they feel safe, and they feel for the first time safe to talk about the actual trauma and not be judged as, "Oh, you're just soft." It's like, "No, I understand. Tell me about it." And it's an amazing thing. We usually have 1 to 2 guys on each trek that is presently suicidal. And I've had the joy of seeing some of those guys crack out of that shell. And it's a process. It doesn't get solved in a week, but it starts that process. And we have the resources to point them in the direction for getting help from other people and other programs. We don't have any monopoly on it. There's dozens of programs out there to help these guys to where they can continue to work on it and process that information and hopefully save themselves and save some relationships around them, because the relationships really suffer through the whole process. Any questions?
How much, if any, female participation do you have?
There's not much. We usually have at least one, sometimes two. We, like this summer, we'll have a female staff member. That makes it a little awkward also, because the female trauma is often deals with sexual trauma. That's pretty common with the ladies that come out. So we've got to have a female on staff to help them have somebody to talk to, because even in that situation, most of them aren't going to share their experience and trauma they've been through. But with the program I've got now, even without a female staff member, I actually use a writing program where we sit down for 15 to 30 minutes and they take that trauma and then they just dump it onto paper. And then we do about a half hour to 45-minute detox from doing that. And then we'll go on with the day and then hopefully talk about it a little bit more that night. And then we do it the second day, the same routine. The first day puts them in the flashback mode where they re-experience that trauma. The second day is pretty difficult also. By the third day, everybody sits around and they write for 5 or 10 minutes because they processed it in the first couple days. And by the fourth day, and I've done this myself, by the fourth day, it's processed. And the worst experiences in your life are processed, and it just becomes a memory rather than an active thing that's going on in your head 24/7.
So for the females that have PTSD that was not sexual related, is that any different? How you address it or how they heal from that than the PTSD that the male counterparts?
That's a really good question. I couldn't answer that specifically. The PTSD affects particularly the organ in your brain called the amygdala, which is your fight or flight organ in your brain. So that part of it is going to be pretty much standard, male or female. The emotional processing of it, of course, is going to be a little bit different. But the effect it has, and that's like whether you've killed somebody in combat, whether you've been wounded in combat, whether you've been upon a really bad car accident or a very dangerous rescue mission, search and rescue, all of those affect the amygdala the same. It doesn't matter what the trauma is, the effect is, I shouldn't say the same, it's very similar, the effect on your brain. So the unwinding of it is going to work pretty much universally for male, female, young, old.
About how many people go to one of the events?
I keep my groups at about 5 or 6.
Oh, okay.
It keeps it very personal, and you know it's expensive. Our currently it costs about $500 per individual that we take on each trek for the individual themselves. So you know there's some cost limits to it. We've had treks. Oh boy, we did a trek 3 years ago. I think we had upwards of 15, 16 participants. And it works, it still works very well, but the amount of time that you can actually individually work with each person gets a little bit more limited. So I personally like to keep the actual participants down to about 6.
And is there any fee for them at all?
No, no.
Nothing. And then how do you raise money?
Uh, we just,
Well, you should ask.
we just talk to people. We'll go talk to the VFW, or whatever, hand out flyers and such.
Like grants.
Yeah, we get grants from a couple organizations in Montana. Town Pump is one of our big supporters. They supply a lot of the money that we actually pay for the fuel at Town Pump with to refuel. We pay for 100% of the fuel costs. Lodging is, of course, you've got your lodging with you, and then we provide one dinner. And the only other cost to them would be, their breakfast and lunch, but we take care of everything else. And then we usually have 3 meals at a restaurant, which we cover that. We have a first day meal and an ending meal, and then we usually find a restaurant during the week to eat at somewhere. But it's a great program. I'm one survivor.
That's how we met.
Yeah.
You said that, earlier, if I clarified this correctly, that, you normally are making that progress or kind of turning the tide maybe, on the 4th day or whatever. What's the longevity of that positive, turn of events and going forward for the participants?
As I said, that week-long program doesn't solve the problem.
No.
It's an introduction. We have a real tight-knit community. We have a running thread on an app we use for communication where we've got 30, 40 people that are continually communicating. So if somebody's in trouble, they just say, hey, I'm having
So
trouble.
there's always some maintenance, if you will.
Yeah.
And that means ongoing forever, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I do a lot of recommending for people other programs that I've been through 5 different programs myself. So I've got quite a variety of experience with programs. So I will recommend them to programs. There's one of the new upcoming treatments is ketamine infusion therapy, which resets the neural pathways of your brain. If you've been in an older home and you see how the carpet might have a path kind of laid down from either dirt or just wear and tear, when with a PTSD brain, and I won't get into all the neurochemistry of it, but it's kind of like that pathway through the carpet. You staying on that pathway back and forth. Your brain will do the same thing with the traumatic events and how you behave during the day. And you've got a pathway set. And that pathway is saying to you, everybody's trying to kill you. Everybody's trying to kill you. Everybody's trying to kill you. And so the ketamine therapy, where you have a pathway of neurotransmitters that are always on firing at max. The ketamine therapy stimulates the neural pathways in your brain. It wakes up all of the other pathways, and where your brain can actually seek some different directions. So that's one of the therapies that I recommend to everybody that's been through a program. So it's a continuing process. Most of the guys that have lived with it for 20, 30, 40 years, they're going to live with it their whole life. So it's a matter of daily, we give them tools for mindfulness and meditation, different tools like that. And to stay out of that hole, you've got to continue forward. You've got to continually work on it. Of all the programs I've been through, the best I've done is about a month and a half. And then you're right back down in the pit if you're not progressing to get more help. So it's a lifelong progress. It doesn't just go away.
Bridget, you have any questions?
I was just writing down notes on the ketamine therapy. So where do you get that at?
There is clinic here in Kalispell,
Alpine Health and Wellness south of town.
Alpine.
Oh.
I'm actually going in next week to get 3 treatments there.
Great folks.
They're going to be opening another clinic here in the next month or so in Kalispell, but yeah, Alpine is a good one for it.
Perfect, thank you.
It's a 6 treatment, typically a 6 treatment process. You go in every second or third day, and you get 6 of the treatments. And they say it's not a magic bullet. For everybody that I have referred and has gotten the treatment, which to this point is 6 people now, it's been life-changing for all of them. And once again, it isn't a magic bullet, but it's about the closest thing to it. When you start to sink again, you go back in for the treatment, resets, and you're feeling great for a while again. Get you to the next program or treatment or help or whatever. But yeah, excellent treatment.
That's amazing because, definitely, there's so many people.
Are you familiar with, what's Huberman's first name? Andrew Huberman on YouTube.
No,
If you look up Andrew Huberman on YouTube, ketamine therapy, he does about an hour and a half presentation on it, and it's excellent. It explains the whole process of how it works on the brain.
I would definitely take a look at that because, you come across people who have it and, that's just another tool in the belt.
Yeah, and it's a really good one. And all of the clinics have a veterans rate. It's expensive. VA is testing it, but we know how the VA works. I have a friend in Minnesota that's going through a VA trial right now with the infusion therapy. And so hopefully in the next 20 years, the VA will approve it for the veterans. We're pushing. I'm pushing with our own state representatives to take a look at it. So hopefully it won't take too long.
That's great.
Then 20 years.
Was that?
So hopefully sooner than 20 years.
Yeah, I sure hope so. They've approved Spravato, which is a nasal version of it, but the infusion part of it is it's the gold standard. Right now with the VA, to even get the nasal version of it, you have to have failed 2 of their gold standard mental therapies. So you have to essentially try to commit suicide twice before they'll approve you to take the ketamine therapy, which is sad, but that's how our system works.
Yeah, non-logic. Yeah, something else we do that on the trucks is we take that television with us, and Mason has half a dozen videos from well-known researchers. They're just short 5 minutes, and we'll play that for the group and then discuss the topic of that particular video as well. So if you see a group out in the woods watching TV, it's probably
Any other questions? I'll close with this last statement. This actually happened to me 5-6 years ago. I have 3 children that are veterans, and one of my sons, a Marine veteran, before he actually joined the Marines, he got involved with SBG. My children suffered a lot as children of a PTSD guy, but his own personal therapy, he got involved with the SBG gym where they do the MMA, fighting on the floor, wrestling each other. And he came home one time and he said, the one thing I don't like about this outfit is there's so many veterans there and they're just a bunch of crybabies because they're always talking about their problems. And he said, I just wish they'd suck it up. And that's, we have a video we show on the suck it up theory of life. And sucking it up is no treatment program.
it's about the worst thing you can do.
It just buries it deeper and deeper. And that's especially with guys my age or older, 60s, 70s. You know, they've dealt with it they've been sucking it up for 34. We have Vietnam veterans that have been sucking it up for 50, 60 years. And that's a barrier that's got to come down, because sucking it up just means suffering. That's the end result of it, just suffering. And it's not just you that suffers, it's your wife. And in my case, 8 children, they all suffer tremendously for it. And family members end up with what they call secondary trauma, having to deal with your mental turmoil day to day. So it's a complicated thing. We're doing our little part to help, and every one individual is, it's all worth it for one guy. Fortunately, we're able to help a lot more than that.
So the 4,000 you said you helped is over a certain amount of time? That's over?
Yeah, that's over many years now. And that's not necessarily that's not in programs. That's
Right.
through communication, presentations,
Mhm.
presentations with veterans. And Dan and Laura have spent a lot of time on the road going around and talking about the process and PTSD and such. And communication. I mean, Dan and Laura, the founders of Homeward, they stay in direct contact with every single individual. They're on speed dial, so you can call them up 24/7. And in my case, drowning.
So besides getting some information about you guys out on our social media sites and hopefully someday helping with fundraising, is there anything else we can do?
No, it's just helping
Okay.
spread the word really helps. I brought some of these with us. This is our sponsorship program here. It's kind of self-explanatory, but if there's businesses that want to help, they can donate to the program, and then we also help promote their business as well. The QR code up here in the corner goes directly to that video. So I do have some of those we can leave. I got some brochures here. We got new ones coming out that are a little bit more up to date, that will have the QR code. So real quick on that video, it's a shortened version of a video that Bluetti did. And I don't know if you're familiar with solar generators, and you take them camping, you can plug stuff in. So Bluetti is one of the big names out there. And they had a program called Bluetti Heroes, and they chose 12 nonprofits in the world to do a video on, a documentary, and Homeward for Heroes was one of them. And that's a shortened version of that. And we use their products because we have walkie-talkies that we use to keep everybody in communication. We run the TV. We have like 12-volt refrigerators we take with us to keep all the food and everything. And so we use a lot of electronics out in the middle of nowhere. And Bluetti is one of the companies we use, and they chose us to, do a video on it, which was, one of 12 in the world is pretty good.
Yes, great.
One of the areas, just very generally, a lot of people are aware of the military part of PTSD and suicide and such. Not very many people are aware of the first responder part of it. And like I say, the trauma is not the same, but the effect is the same. There's no difference whatsoever. And you've got so many EMS people, police, firefighters, EMS, the guys that are doing the EMT and ambulance work, that are just wound up tight. I had one of the first people I met when I was diagnosed with PTSD had worked a stretch of about 90 miles where he was the EMT for a 90-mile stretch of highway for 17 years. He was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, misdiagnosed with Alzheimer's. He was unable to work. He couldn't go to church. He couldn't be in a crowd of people. And I don't remember how it happened, but he got to another doctor we sent him into a mental health area. It was PTSD. It was not Alzheimer's, it was PTSD. That's how much PTSD affected his life. So if you have any contact, especially with EMS, police, if you know anybody, send them our way, because for them, with the military, it's not quite so bad, but in the civilian world, there's a big stigma when it comes to your career and your mental health, and people are just scared to get help. And so if you ever have somebody, you know, in that world that you can communicate with, send them our way, and we'll take them on.
brochures.
Yeah, we've got
Yeah,
some.
we've got some brochures here. And then we also work with a lot of other organizations around town. We just want guys and women to get help. You know, for Homeward for Heroes, it's outdoors and camping and jeeps and treks. I'm also an equine therapy instructor for veterans. There's underwater soldiers in town. They do, you know, diving. They do a lot of good work. And, you know, some people don't have four-wheel drive, so they'll send them to me to do equine classes. Some people are allergic to horses. I'll send them to, you know, do their thing. As long as people get the help they need, that's what we care about. So.
Your description of EMTs 25 to 40 years ago, the Montana Highway Patrol recognized they had a problem with higher patrol officers, mostly in eastern Montana, where they're the only guy.
Yep.
For hundreds of square miles, and there's nobody they can even get support from.
Yeah.
And I mean, there were actually, you know, court cases of settlements and whatnot on that, because they simply were getting so stressed out, they couldn't function anymore. And consequently, they have changed that, and they just don't have sole areas anymore. They always have overlapping areas, so people can get that support. But when you're out there and you're the only guy that's answering all these huge accidents and everything, it was a big deal.
Oh, yeah, and it still is.
Yeah.
It's a big deal. I know a couple of guys that have been involved in shootings where they withdrew, and they even withdrew from their families and lost everything because they couldn't find help in the right time. They got help, but by then, you know, retirement age and everything kind of goes down the tubes. Yeah, we're here to help, and like I said, we're not. We don't have any monopoly on anything. We're here to help and partner up with anybody.
Thank you.
I'll pass this around. I'm involved with search and rescue and work with the sheriff's office all the time.
Okay.
Probably 30% of our calls are recovery as opposed to rescue.
Yeah.
That's maybe a little more the last few months.
Yeah.
But yeah.
That's rough stuff to deal with too.
That's what Mason did in the Coast Guard. The search and rescue.
We're all stationed.
I spent all my time in Kodiak, Alaska. Air Station in Kodiak. Anything else?
Oh, that was great. Thanks for coming.
Appreciate you having
Yeah.
us. Thank you very much.
We appreciate you sharing.
And I'll leave all this stuff here if you know somebody who wants to pass. it
Yes,
on.
definitely.
We know
That'd
plenty.
be great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And
Bye, Bridget.
bye.
All right.
All right.
Did you have anything else, or are we free to go, Steph?